is Terry Bradshaw, quarterback, Pittsburgh Steelers.
It's 7:15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron.
This is baseball, Major League Baseball. And this is
ABC's Monday Night Baseball, live from Fenway Park in Boston, Massachusetts.
Looking. He's under the gun. He's tied. He throws. It is.
Hey everyone, and thanks for checking in with us for another Past Our Prime episode. September 29th, 1975, Notre Dame quarterback Rick Slager on the cover as the Irish have a new head coach, Dan Devine, taking over for Ara Parseghian. We'll talk some college football coming up in a bit with three-time All-American tight end for the Fighting Irish in 75, 76, and 77, Ken MacAfee. Can't wait to talk with Ken, and can't wait to talk with Bill and Mark. Well, that might be an overstatement, but nonetheless, that's what I'm going to do. What's up, guys?
Not a lot. Feeling good.
I have nothing to say to either of you.
Well, we're going to change that, or you can hang up. One or the other. I was going to ask
Mark on mute.
All right, so Mark, you're a UCLA guy, and Notre Dame's a big rival for the Bruins in basketball.
Right.
And Billy, you're kind of a USC guy. Notre Dame is, or at least was, I don't know if the rivalry is still the same as it was, but back then it sure was. So I want to know, 50 years ago, what did you guys think of Notre Dame? Take them or leave them?
I loved him. My dad always loved him. So, I loved him because of that, because they were Irish.
Gotcha.
And we were Irish. So that's all.
Yeah, my memory is they were always good. And what they used to do is they were so popular, they would do a 1 hour version of their game. So they'd edit out, halftime and all the stuff, and they'd air it. So like in California, it'd be like on Channel 5 or Channel 9. It'd be like Sunday night. It'd be whoever they played on Saturday. And Lindsey Nelson would narrate it. And I always remember there was a linebacker on the team or something named Mike McCoy, and he'd always be like, and the tackle by Mike McCoy with the tackle. But what was great is you knew Notre Dame was going to score because they'd go, we moved on to later on in the second quarter. And you knew, okay, it's setting up the next score here.
Yeah, so you didn't have to wait through the puns and penalties and all that stuff.
Exactly.
So the fact that UCLA had two of their biggest losses ever, and once again in basketball, didn't make you despise Notre Dame?
No, because they had their 88 game winning streak snapped there, and 3 years earlier their prior loss was there to Austin Carr Notre Dame, but also 2 years later they won at South Bend, and that broke the record and gave them, I think, their 61st straight win.
I like them. Lou Holt's teams were fun. That was back when they were, going for national titles and playing Miami and all that stuff. But I think it's one of those things where, it's good for college football for Notre Dame to be good. The same way it's good for it's good for the Cowboys. It's good for, the NFL for the Cowboys to be good. It's good. Right. The Patriots were great for the NFL because basically everybody cared what they did, whether they cared if they won or lost. So I think those kind of teams, Duke in basketball, those kind of teams, the Lakers and the Celtics, both in the NBA. So
Dodgers and Yankees in baseball.
Yep. So, hey, before we get to the scorecard, I'm going to talk a bit about the book review. It's called Mortal Stakes by Robert Parker. And I was thinking of you, Mark. It centers on a private detective by the name of Spencer. And in this case, he's investigating a Red Sox pitcher and if he's on the take. My dad really enjoyed this series of books. I think there ended up being about 40 of them, and they turned them into a very successful TV show called Spencer for Hire, starring Robert Urich. So right. I knew that you would know that. And Robert Parker, the author, also had another series of books that they turned into a bunch of made-for-TV films called Jesse Stone, which starred Tigers superfan Tom Selleck. So anyway, this guy was a favorite author of my dad's, and he had a lot of his work turned into TV shows. So just a couple of nuggets there that hit home for me. Yeah, Tom Selleck used to wear a Tigers hat, and
Yeah.
not in the
Yeah.
Jesse Stone one as much, but he sure did in Magnum, right?
And they would refer to tiger stories in the plots a lot.
Yeah. All right, now on to the scorecard. Billy, start us off.
Okay, I'm going to tell you a story about Mark Totten. Totten was a center for the Florida Gator football team. One day in practice, he hurts his knee, so I had to put him on crutches just to get around. A couple days later, he's at his dormitory. He slips and falls down the dormitory stairs. You think he got hurt again? No, the fall did something really weird. Totten said the knee unlocked, the swelling went down, and he felt okay. The next afternoon, sans the crutches, he was back in uniform practicing again. Apparently, the accident on the football field had caused a piece of cartilage to jam Totten's knee, and the irritation created a buildup of fluid. When he fell down the stairs, the cartilage was knocked loose, the knee was subsequently drained, and the healing was almost immediate.
Oh my
Now
goodness.
that is a great falling down the stairs story.
Yeah.
It is. We should try it. We should test it out.
Yes, well, they said the coach had that happen to him. The coach had hurt his knee. He went under knee surgery, and while convalescing, he too fell down a flight of stairs. The only trouble was he had to have 2 more operations, and his knee still a little stiff.
I say we still test it out. Which one of you can go to the top of the stairs so I can push them off?
Well, let's find some good steps to do that. Yes.
That's true. We
Yeah.
may hurt our knee very badly, could even be worse than that. And Mark is volunteering to spend the rest of his
Yes.
life in jail.
Yes.
I am. Well, no, it could be
And we
like
have
the
it
last
recorded.
the last John Wick film. They do this like fight sequence on these steps, and I swear to God, he's falling down like 50 steps, but then he's able to get right back up.
Yeah.
So,
He does, man. John Wicks, you don't mess with him.
yeah.
Mark.
Well, I'm tossing and turning between 2 stories, so I have to pick. I'm going to go with this one. So they still haven't been called the Seahawks, but the new NFL team, the Seattle team, got one of the first season ticket orders for the upcoming 76th season for the opener. And where did the order come from? From a prison inmate. He wrote that he would be free for the 76 owner, and he didn't want it for the 76 opener, and didn't want to be shut out. So there you go.
Hey, he's looking ahead.
Yeah,
Looking
yeah,
ahead. He's off on good time. Wanted to see Jim Zorn.
yeah, that's right.
All right. They said it. Mark.
Well, I got one from Conrad Dobler, who was a very outspoken offensive lineman with the St. Louis Cardinals. And he had been charged that he had bitten a rival player. He said, I can say with a clear conscience that I never knowingly bit another football player. For one thing, I believe in good hygiene.
Yeah, how about that? He never knowingly. He may have,
Yeah.
Knowingly is the
may
key
have
word.
unknowingly bitten someone.
His mouth was open and his teeth happened to wrap around the guy's leg. Hey, man, that happens.
All right, that gets us to our cover story. The Echoes are wide awake. Notre Dame won a national championship in 1973 when they beat Alabama on a kick by Bob Thomas, who was a guest on our very first pop show in January of 24. Coach Ara Parseghian led that team. But after the 74 season concluded at the age of 52, he has retired, and Mark has handed over the reins to Dan Devine.
He sure has. And, it's a whole new era. You think about it, maybe it's not on the level of John Wooden, but Ara Parseghian was a pretty big legend in Notre Dame, and you got to take over. And it really doesn't matter what your record is. You're just not going to be looked at in the same light. You're not going to have the same success no matter what your record is. And I believe Devine was from 1975 to 1980 was their head coach. And I mean, he had moderate success, but not on the level of Ara Parseghian. I mean, he does win a title in '77, but you'll never be compared to a legend. You never live up to it, no matter how well you do.
Yep. Yeah, always difficult, no question. And yet, Billy, it was a new head coach, but not a new coaching staff.
No, Devine came in and thought, I'm taking over for a legend. I'm not going to rip the staff out and maybe in a lot of ways hurt the players even more and his first year. So he kept all the assistants, no sweeping changes. He goes, in my younger days, I would have felt compelled to make changes just to show I was in charge. He doesn't have to do that now. So he was much more confident. So he kept all the assistant coaches, which obviously helped him years down the road.
The defense for this team is second to none, but the offense not quite up to their level, not yet at least, partially because former past our prime guest Frank Alaco has separated his shoulder, and that has led to Rick Slager, who's lining up over center and on the cover of this week's Sports Illustrated. Slager's a couple of things most big-time college quarterbacks are not. He's a pre-med student. He doesn't want to play pro football. One of the reasons he came to Notre Dame in the first place was because he wanted to play a different sport, Billy.
Yeah, I wanted to play tennis. He said he played more tennis than football before this. So yeah, he had no interest in going pro. Maybe a tennis player he might have wanted to.
Yeah, he was number one in varsity singles, and he has played more, like you said, more tennis than he did football. And he went on, he did not play in the NFL, had a very successful business career after getting his law degree at Notre Dame. So now, even though the Irish had only 2 national championships in the past 25 years in 1975, they were still expected to challenge for them every year. And this year was no different. Dan Devine came from Green Bay. When he resigned, Bart Starr took that job because Devine was hired to come back to college and coach Notre Dame. But his offense had 10 out of 11 new starters. One of them, tight end Ken MacAfee, who would go on to be an All-American that year when he caught 26 passes for 333 yards and 5 touchdowns. He improved those numbers in both 76 and 77 and was named All-American both of those years as well. In fact, in 1977, he won the Walter Camp Award, given to the nation's top college football player, and finished third in the Heisman voting to someone you've probably heard of, Earl Campbell. And Ken joins us now from Falmouth, Massachusetts. He's just down the street from me. Nice to see you, Ken. Thanks for coming on the Past Our Prime podcast.
Oh, thank you very much. Nice to be with you guys. I don't know about the title though, Past Our Prime. It's kind of harrowing.
Yeah. Well, as I tell everyone, that's meant for the three of us, not for our guests.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think I'm probably older than all of you. So.
Hey, speak for yourself, man. I'm not past my prime.
You're in your prime.
That's right.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about one of the two guys on the cover of this issue, Coach Devine. We all know how he was portrayed in a certain movie that we'll probably discuss in a bit, but it wasn't great. How was he to actually play for?
Of course, my class, being the last class that was recruited by Ara Parseghian, you couldn't have more two diametrically opposed coaches. I mean, Ara Parseghian was hands-on. He called all the offensive plays. He was hands-on during practice. And Dan Devine was just the opposite. He'd go up in the tower and change his jacket 3 or 4 times and have one of the staff guys go and get him a milkshake. And, he was kind of not quite hands-on, but we had great assistant coaches. I think that was his legacy, is that he actually had great assistants that could relate to the players much better. And, he had a very high voice, meek voice, whereas Ara was very definitive. And so as I said, they couldn't be two opposed personalities. But so the point is basically, after playing with Ara Parseghian for a year and then seeing Dan Devine come in, it was like, man, who is this guy? Is he worthy of being the Notre Dame head coach? And there was a lot of controversy on our team, particularly that first year, because of the fact that I think it was more of a personality issue.
Interesting. Wow. The 75 team, you guys had a hard time finding your rhythm. You finished 8-3. How disappointing was season was that for you guys? And just a difficult season, sounds like, from start to finish.
Oh yeah, back then, of course, Notre Dame had just won the national championship 2 years prior, and my freshman year, which was 1974, I mean, had we beaten USC that year, we would have won the national championship. So we've been back-to-back national champions. But going to that other year, I mean, losing 3 games back in those days, was unheard of at Notre Dame. If you lost 1, maybe 2, you're acceptable. It's acceptable. But, you lose 3 games and, it was not acceptable. And particularly to our team at the time, we had a meeting because we were invited to play in the Cotton Bowl. And I remember the upperclassmen standing up and said, "No way, I'm not playing another game for this, for this guy." And, we're not gonna go to the Cotton Bowl. It's not gonna advance our position in the standings much. I mean, we were supposed to play, I think we were gonna play Houston or whatever. So it wasn't really the point of going to a bowl game was to elevate your status, in the rankings, but that wasn't going to happen. So a lot of guys were just opposed to it.
So 2 years after that 75 season, in 77, you win it all. Talk about the change. And if I'm not mistaken, didn't Joe Montana miss the 76 season, but then came back for the 77 season?
Yeah, he had a shoulder injury, which he got in spring practice. So he had to sit out a year and redshirted. So, yeah, the 77 season, didn't get off to a great start. We beat Pittsburgh the first game. They actually changed the Pittsburgh game from the middle of the season to the first game of the year to be on national television because they were the defending national champions. And we beat them, 19-9, which, wasn't great, but at least we won the game. And we go down to Mississippi, which was supposed to be played at 7:00 at night, and they changed it to 12:00 in the afternoon. It was 102 degrees on the field. And we lost 20-13. So we didn't get off to a great start. So we had a team-only meeting because we knew we were better than that. And, we played Purdue the next week, and Rusty Lish was the starting quarterback the first 2 games. And we played at Purdue, and he started again. Long story short, he wasn't playing too well. We were losing, I think 24-10 or whatever in the first half. And so they put a quarterback in called Gary Forstek was his name. He was a great passer, great athlete. On the second play from scrimmage, he runs with the ball. And, of course, there was no targeting back then. So the linebacker hit him right under the chin with his helmet. And he broke his neck. And he's laying on the field, and a ambulance comes on the field and takes him away. And I've never seen that before, so it was kind of a little bit harrowing. But they put Rusty Lish back in, and he still wasn't getting the job done. So they're looking around, and there's Joe Montana, the last quarterback. So they put him in, and long story short, we didn't lose another game that year after they started him the rest of the year. So, he went on to do a little. He did okay for himself, But yeah, that was kind of the end of Rusty Lish for that year.
Well, the interesting thing about Montana, I guess, in that 75 season, though he wasn't the starter, he did come in and finish some of the games. Could you tell that 75 season how great of a player he would be?
You really could. You could see the fact that he came in. I'm trying to recall. I think it was North Carolina where we were losing, and he came in and we scored a touchdown. And then with, I think, minutes to go, he threw an 80-yard touchdown pass. And we went on to win. I think it ended up being like 21-14. But and then we go out to Air Force, and we're losing 30-10 with 10 minutes to go in the game. And they put Joe in, and we end up winning 31-30. So, he was inserted in certain positions, and we made those comeback victories. And I think a lot of controversy began in the locker room because a lot of guys saying, well, how come Joe's not starting? He's coming in, he's winning these games for us, but the next week he's not starting. So a lot of controversy began in that year, and I think it, kind of separated the team somewhat, just because of the quarterback issue.
Now, going back to 77, there was one key game. Tell me about the green jersey game against USC, and what was it like to be on the field that day when the team ran out in all green?
Oh yeah, it was pretty exciting. The we warmed up in our blue jerseys, in normal colors, and then during that time, the Devine had the manager put green jerseys in all our lockers. So when we came back into the locker room, everyone had a green jersey. So I had kind of an issue where I'd come into the locker room at the end of after the warm ups at the very last guy. And so I come up the stairs from the tunnel into the locker room, and I just hear all this screaming and jumping around. And I said, "What the heck's going on here?" And I see guys, half the team has green shirts on, and I said, "What's going on?" So it was everyone. You kind of felt like you'd already won the game. Everyone's getting so excited that coaches are trying to settle guys down, but literally, it sounded like we had just won the national championship. And so we had our normal prayer with Father Reilly, who was the priest, the team priest, and we didn't even give Dan Devine a chance to say anything. Everyone just ran down the stairs into the tunnel, and we come out on the field. I had never heard Notre Dame Stadium that loud, and it was quite an event, And so, like Chris Haynes said, he talked to a bunch of guys that he had played in the pros with for a couple of years, and who had played for USC that game. And they said, when you guys ran out of that locker room with those green jerseys, we knew we were done. so I guess it played a little bit of a psychological role for them as well. But no, it was really something. I'll tell you, I never repeat it. Notre Dame has worn green jerseys occasionally for certain games, here and there, but it really never had the impact that did, because of the fact that we went on to win the national championship.
Would you say those jerseys in that game was the turning point of that season? Because you walloped USC with 49 points. You come back 43 the next week, then put 69 on Georgia Tech. It just seemed like the team clicked right after that game and that jersey game.
Oh, absolutely. I thought that had a big impact, and we dedicated the season to say we're going to wear green for the rest of the season. We initially thought it was just going to be just for one game, but then we said, no, we're going to wear green for the rest of the season. And then, as the year went on, we won game after game after game. Finally we go down to when we played Cotton Bowl against Texas, the big controversy in the papers, and was, all right, you're going to wear green jerseys. We say, well, yeah, they might have their home jerseys on, but we might wear green anyway. And so now there's like a big controversy about jerseys. So it was quite a time, but obviously, I think it had somewhat of a psychological impact on us positively.
We are talking with three-time All-American tight end and a key member of the 1977 Notre Dame National Championship team, Ken MacAfee. And you win that national championship, Ken, on January 2nd, 1978. You play undefeated and #1 ranked Texas and Earl Campbell. And despite Earl rushing for 116 of the Longhorns, 130 yards on the ground, you guys run all over them. 243 yards rushing and a national championship. What was that day like for you guys?
Oh, it was incredible, because we had to work our way back, having lost to Ole Miss in that second game of the year. I think we went down to 11th or something like that. And so we had to spend the entire year working our way back to try to get to the top position to compete for a national championship. So based on the previous playoff system, which was implemented, the top 4 teams play in the playoff. We were ranked 5th going into that game in the Cotton Bowl, and had it been the recent system, we never even got into the playoffs. So we were just fortunate, that having gone to get down to Texas, you're in their backyard essentially playing in the Cotton Bowl, so it was like a home game for them. So they were the only undefeated team in the country that year. So we knew that we had to win big if we even had an opportunity to compete for the national championship or get the ranking. So just attempting to do that, and they had, Earl Campbell, Heisman Trophy winner. They had Russell Erkslavin, who was like the best kicker in the country. Brad Shearer, defensive tackle, who won. I think he won. One of the lineman awards, whatever. So, I mean, they were stacked and they were undefeated, and obviously they deserved the ranking. They were great. And just going. We just started running up and down the field on them, and they just couldn't stop us. I mean, our offensive line that day, no one was going to beat us that day. I mean, just anyone could have run the ball or thrown the ball. I mean, our offensive line was so motivated. I've never seen anything like it, because there was a lot of controversy before the game, kind of name calling and this and that. And so our offensive line just took it to them. And like I said, we had a lot of yardage, and of course with Joe at quarterback, we just were able to dominate them really.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Ken, you had college Joe Montana, so maybe you knew before most of the world how special he was. And he was always at his best, as he proved later, when it mattered most. Take us inside. How good was he, and how much better did he make the guys around him?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think he did, because he was kind of one of these silent leaders, so to speak, where he wasn't really a rah guy. Neither was I. I've never been that kind of athlete, but he just had this inner quality that you knew his athleticism, could supersede anything that you could yell out in the locker room. So we knew what kind of athlete he was, and he was the first guy I've seen that stood underneath a basketball hoop from a stationary position and jump up and two-hand stuff it behind his head. I said, "Wait a minute, did you do that?" I mean, I said, "You're a white guy from Montego, Pennsylvania." I said, "How can you do that?" And so he's just a great athlete, all around athlete. Everyone knew it, and Rusty Lish was a great athlete too. I mean, he had great skills, but when Joe just kind of like a silent leader, and he just exuded confidence, and it just was pervasive, right down the line.
Can you talk about the relationship that Joe Montana had with his teammates and stuff? Because he's a guy, and I want to get into this rivalry with USC, but the thing I find fascinating about Joe is, even though he's a diehard fighting Irish, he had a business relationship with Ronnie Lott, who's a Trojan. And so an Irish and a Trojan can get together, I think says a lot about the character of Joe Montana. Talk about his relationship with other people.
Yeah, he was, like I say, he was a very kind of introverted guy. But if you got him alone, you start talking, he became a little bit more extroverted, but he was a funny guy. I mean, he made fun of guys in the locker room, and he was just enjoyable to be around. He wasn't a guy that was pontificating about issues that really didn't matter as far as other people are concerned. So he's just a very personable guy, and I always found him to be very truthful, and if you did something wrong, he'd call you out on it, and if you did something great, he'd slap you on the back. So he was a great teammate and a great leader. And I thought that as far as his abilities are concerned, they speak for themselves. But with Ronnie Lott, I don't know. Maybe if they're doing business together, good.
Well, I went up to the Bay Area one year and I met both of them, and we did a segment for a show where we recreated the catch with Dwight Clark. And yeah, so they were actually very close, which is surprising when you think of, a Trojan and a fighting Irish. But getting into that rivalry, To me, Notre Dame and USC is the greatest rivalry in college football, maybe in sports, though I'm sure Yankee Red Sox fans would argue about that. Talk about that rivalry. And when you come to Notre Dame, do you have this instant hatred for the Trojans?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a hatred, but I'd call it a serious dislike. But yeah, I mean, after my freshman year, I learned to hate them pretty much. I don't know if you recall that game, but that was quite controversial. We were winning 24-0 and ended up losing 55-24. So it
Yeah, a
was
guy named Anthony Davis kind of made a name for himself that day.
yeah, the guy, I don't know, I forget how many. I think he scored 4 or 5 touchdowns after. I think a couple of years before that, he'd scored 6 touchdowns against Notre Dame. So he was, he was a little thorn in our side. We're winning 24-0. We come out the second half and kick off, and he takes the ball 4 yards deep in the end zone and runs up the sideline untouched, and for a touchdown, and that completely changed the face of the game, obviously. So I developed somewhat of a hatred, I think, after that game. As I said, because they were 9-1-1 that year and went on to beat. They beat Ohio State on a 2-point conversion in the Rose Bowl in the last play of the game. So had we beaten them, we would have been national champs because we beat Alabama in the Orange Bowl. So that hatred kind of continued, I think, through the next year, because we were winning the next year and ended up losing. My junior year, we were out there, we were winning, and we ended up losing. And so then finally, senior year, we came back home and played them. And the first half was somewhat close, and then we just kind of took off after that, but ended up beating them 49-19. So that was kind of great retribution for having 3 years of misery. So
I'm going to go back to when you first were at Notre Dame. Now, I read you started out as a wide receiver before becoming the tight end. How did that switch come about, and how did you know right away that tight end was the spot where you could shine?
Well, I was I was kind of playing tight end and wide receiver during training camp, and then they in those offenses, we split out sometimes. The tight end did. So, I was kind of moving back and forth between wide receiver and tight end. But then, I don't know, I guess I started gaining a little weight, and they said, well, geez, at 250 pounds, you're not going to be a wide receiver anymore. So I think, they moved me back to tight end on a permanent basis, which was fine with me, because I enjoyed blocking, and, of course, everyone wants to catch the ball, but my dad had been a tight end also, and so it was kind of like a family thing, So.
Did your dad give you hints and stuff about that, or help you out?
Yeah, I asked him questions, and ironically, I mean, he went to Alabama and played for the Giants for 6 years back in the 50s. So he was actually coach of a farm team for the Green Bay Packers. So he had some coaching skills as well. So I used to ask him techniques and things to do, which he was very helpful with. But it was enjoyable. I mean, I love tight end. You can hide sometimes and get away with a few things you wouldn't be able to as sitting out wide when everyone's can see you. So.
And now you see in the NFL how much the tight end has taken off. Looking at it now, you think, man, I wish I was playing that position now in the NFL, because things have really, salaries, everything about the tight end position's changed.
Oh yeah, salary particularly. Right? Yeah, well, that's a little different these days. I mean, kids in college football are making more than some guys in the NFL, which
crazy
which is a whole nother topic. But yeah, these days, I mean, you see how the spread offenses have evolved over the years, and you look at guys like Kelsey and all these tight ends now that are catching 50, 60, 70 passes a year, and back then it was if you caught 30 or 40 passes a year, you're all pro, so So it's changed somewhat, just from the offensive schemes. And as a result, they just have more ability to move down the field a little bit more freely. So, when you're tight end exclusively and you don't split out, or you're just kind of right at your tight end position. I mean, you're within that 10 to 20 range with some linebacker covering you most of the time, or strong safety. But now these guys, they're in a completely different offensive mode.
Ken, your college career comes to an end. Like I mentioned, 3-time All-American. You're the best tight end in the country. You get drafted by the 49ers. Seems like a perfect match, but you decide to cut your NFL career short. Tell us about that decision and what happened.
Yeah, we went to when I was drafted. Pete McCulley was the head coach. There's a forgettable name for you, right? We were 1-6, and so they fired him. And Freddie O'Connor, who had been the offensive coordinator, he was the head coach for the rest of the year. Well, we went 2-14, and I lost more games that year than I lost in high schools and college combined. So it's kind of disappointing, obviously. Then Bill Walsh came in the following year as the head coach, and having 3 head coaches in 2 years, you're trying to learn different systems, and so there was, Bill Walsh came in with really the first West Coast offense, and so he came to me after that season and said, "Look, we really don't use the tight end much in this scheme that we're putting in. A lot of the backs and wide receivers primarily. So I'd like to move you to guard." I said, "Bill, I've never played guard." He said, "Well, you're a great blocker. I think you can be an all-pro guard. I'd really like to move you inside." And I said, "Well, yeah, I enjoy blocking, but not every single play, So he said, "Well, he goes, I'm going to go after Charlie Taylor, if for next year." But I said, "Well, that's fine." I said, "I'm not really interested." I said, "Should I bother come to training camp?" I said, "I'm really not interested in playing guard, So I did go to training camp, and I said, after I think it was after our 3rd preseason game, he said, "Look, you want to play guard or not? We'll give you one more opportunity." I said, "Nah." I said, "I'm just going to go back and finish dental school," So that's basically what I did, and I'd been going to dental school for, 2 years of during the off season. And so when I finished with the 49ers, I just went back to kind of complete school. And then I got a call from Les Steckel, who was a coach. He tried to recruit me to go to Colorado, actually, when I was in high school. And he was an assistant coach for the Minnesota Vikings. And so they said they needed a tight end. He said, "Would I be willing to try again?" I said, "Well, I'm only 24 years old, or 25. I said, "Yeah, I could come back and try it again." So I played with the Vikings, and in the last preseason game, I got a bad back injury and couldn't walk for about a month. And I said, "If I ever heal from this injury, I'm never playing this game again." So that was the end of that.
Explain how you got in to become a dentist, or became fascinated with that medical profession. Because I mean, you're playing football where people get their teeth knocked out, and here you are going to a profession where you're saving people's teeth.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's kind of an interesting story. When I was in high school, I worked a summer job with a guy who was the captain of the Holy Cross football team, and he was, I think, he was maybe 6 years older than I was, but he was in dental school because he had received a bad head injury and when he was drafted by the Redskins. They said, "Look, you can play football, but you're taking a risk. If you ever get a bad head injury again, I mean, you could potentially die." He said, "Okay, I'm done with that." And, he went to dental school. So, I was 16 years old, and he said, "Look, you're going to go to school on an athletic scholarship, so you might as well study something worthwhile. Let me show you what dentistry is about." So I kind of enjoyed. I like working with my hands. I kind of enjoyed it, and then he introduced me to a couple of oral surgeons. And I went into the operating room and saw some surgery they were doing in those days, and I said, that's what I want to do. So I basically went to dental school just to leapfrog and get into to be an oral and maxillofacial surgeon, which I ended up becoming, and and now I'm retired, which is even better, So.
And how's the back?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, it's still bothersome occasionally. Those injuries never go away. I mean, I'm out there digging a hole the other day, and halfway through I have to sit down so I can, proceed with caution thereafter.
Did any of your former teammates come and see you?
No, not really. I had, but I had a couple of the Patriots that live in the area. I had them as patients, and actually a few of their kids, take their wisdom teeth out. So it's, so yeah, I've had a few of them around. A couple of the Bruins came in as well, Boston Bruins. So
they're always open for business there in hockey.
Oh yeah, there's always stuff to do there. I said, as soon as they walk in, I said, "Look, I don't fix them anymore. If you're coming to see me, they're coming out." So.
Now I want to ask this. I want to go back to when you're at Notre Dame, Ken.
Sure.
And I know friends a couple friends played at Notre Dame many years ago. But tell me, what is it like to play for Notre Dame and to be on that field? What is that emotional rush that you get?
Yeah, it's really, I've been asked that question a lot, it's particularly by, people like similar to who may have attended there or never really had that feeling, and very difficult to explain because it's kind of, you basically internalize it. There's a lot of guys that, are really rah guys and go out and get excited, but I was always a guy that tried to kind of, and envelop the whole process, and when we played there, I mean, the stadium held 59,000, now it's 82,000. So it was the stadium itself, the house that Rockne built, so to speak, it just reeked of tradition and the amount of the feeling that kind of comes out of you is really indescribable, because I remember the first time we went out, the first 3 games we had when I was a freshman were away. So we came back to Notre Dame Stadium for the first time after playing 3 games. And as an 18-year-old freshman, running onto that field and, watching all the guys that had won the national championship the year before and were all Americans. And, that's why I come out of the locker room last. I just didn't want to be, I just going to be this lonely freshman coming out of the last portion of the group. So the first time it ran out, it was we were playing Purdue, and of course that's a big intrastate rivalry. So you can't, like I said, you can't explain it. They have flags of all the teams that you play in the stadium. They dress up the stadium for game day, and you look around and just the bricks that you see, and you walk down the tunnel and play like a champion today, and you see all the previous they have a sign on the wall with all the previous national champions, and you look down the line, Newt Rockne, Frank Leahy, Ara Parseghian, and it's quite an emotional thing, when you first come down, and of course you run out of the tunnel. I don't think there's any experience like that in college football. Everyone can say, yeah, this is great, and we have this tradition, but when you come out of Notre Dame tunnel into the stadium, there's nothing like it.
Questions fly, lightning strikes as answers try. Buzzers ring chaos in the air. Trivia time, truth or dare.
Now, most people think I'm going to ask you a trivia question about the movie Rudy, which I'm not. But before I get into the trivia question, I assume you've seen it. And how accurate was that movie?
The last 5 minutes were extremely accurate. Yeah. They
The credits.
I know there's been some controversy around Rudy, but from a motivational standpoint for a young kid watching that movie, I think it's great. From a truth standpoint, did Rudy, climbing through a window and sleep in the stadium? No. Did he talk to the guy that was the groundskeeper? No. Did they carry him off the shoulders at the end of the game? Yes, they did. So there was a lot of truth involved in it. I think his making his way to Notre Dame was truthful. The reason I know that is because he was a classmate of my girlfriend at Notre Dame. So they went to high school together. So she confirmed all those things for me. But yeah, a lot of things of course you have to make, Hollywood, and you have to build up the story in certain ways, which, may be less than truthful, let's say. But I think the bottom line of that movie was the inspiration and the message that it gives is that it portrays, I think, is great.
So Ken, you're telling me the part where you all walked into Coach Devine and put your jerseys down, you didn't do that? I'm gonna.
No, that was one thing that didn't happen. However, there was a guy who's a defensive back named Pat Sarb, and he's the one that really deserves the credit because he went into Notre Dame, the coach, and said, "Look," he goes, "I'm a senior." He goes, "I know I'm not going to play, and you should give my jersey to Rudy to be able to play." And they didn't really depict that in the film. Kind of, everyone coming in putting their jerseys on, and you may have heard maybe an excerpt, I think, of Dan Devine saying, if that had actually happened, anyone that put their jersey on my desk would never have played here again.
Well, that's a crappy movie.
Yeah, right.
That doesn't end well.
Well, now wait a second. If Joe Montana puts his jersey down there, he's really good.
Yeah.
You're done.
I know, right?
And just confirming, Vince Vaughn was not on that Notre Dame football team.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay,
man,
so,
good guy, but no, wasn't on the team.
So that was not my trivia question. I'll get to my trivia question because we're going to go back to Joe Montana. So true or false, and because you guys are sort of tied to the hip, because not only Notre Dame, but then your second year with the Niners, all of a sudden he's drafted by the Niners, and there he is again.
Right. Yeah.
So my trivia question for you, true or false, Joe Montana actually once appeared on an episode of The Simpsons?
True.
That is true. That is true. It was a episode that aired on October 19th, 2008, which, by the way, was my 12th wedding anniversary. And
congratulations.
Thank you. It was called Double Double Boy in Trouble.
Better to be on The Simpsons than with O.J. Simpson. That's what I
That's
always say.
Yeah. Yeah, right. How those Simpsons images can be portrayed, right?
Ken, my favorite Montana story, and tell me if you can relate to this and if you've heard it, but is the Super Bowl against the Bengals, the second one. And they need to go 90 yards in 2 minutes, and they need a touchdown to win. And, the eyes of the world are on him, and he gets into the huddle, and he looks over and he says to Randy Cross, "Hey, I think that's John Candy in the end zone, way at the end of the field." So all this stuff is happening and Montana is preoccupied that John Candy's on the field. That just shows that he was so calm and cool and the moment was not too big for him.
Exactly. Oh, and that's exactly what he did during the whole season in 77, when we just went on, we were losing to Clemson, who had been ranked 15th that year. And we just had, I think we needed to get the ball back at the end of the game, and defense actually caused the fumble to get the ball back. And we ran out on the field. And he says, "Okay, guys, ready to win? We're in the end zone in 5 plays." 5 plays later, we're in the end zone. So that's the kind of guy he was. He did nothing really nothing really bothered him, which is the kind of leader you want. You know, you don't want some guy in there biting his nails, you know,
Right.
and going crazy in the huddle, you know. So he's just very calm, collected. He's been like that, you know, ever since I can remember. We started as freshmen together, obviously, you know. So he's been like that ever since I've known him.
Ken, you know, you were inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame in 1997, 20 years after your career at Notre Dame ended. Who knows what could have happened in the NFL with you on the receiving end of Joe Montana passes had they not asked you to move positions. But it sounds like you made the right decision, became an oral surgeon, helped how many people, you know, countless people. Seems like you're at peace with your decision all these years later. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, absolutely. And I asked Bill Walsh the same thing. Why couldn't you have Joe throw me the ball? I mean, that's fine. We did it in college. We can do it here too. You know, I want to play guard.
So whatever that Bill Walsh never amounted to anything anyway.
No,
Nah, he sucked. He was
faded away.
Thank you so much, Ken. Enjoy your
Hey.
day.
Ken,
Hey, thank you. Take care.
Thank
Be
you.
good. Thanks so much. As much play as match. I'm not a huge golf fan. Don't watch it every week. In fact, I rarely watch it. Follow who wins, but I'm not in front of the tube every week watching. But I do enjoy the Ryder Cup. And in 1975, the Americans won with Arnold Palmer as the captain. And why did they win? Look at this team. Jack Nicklaus, Lee Trevino, Tom Weiskopf, Johnny Miller, Hale Irwin, Billy Casper, Gene Littler, Al Geiberger, Bob Murphy, Ray Floyd, J.C. Sneed, and Lou Graham. I mean, that is an unbelievable group of golfers. This one was over early on Sunday when Weiskopf beat Guy Hunt 5-3. Mark, how did Palmer decide on the pairing for the U.S.?
Well, according to Palmer, he said that Nicholas and Weiskopf were together because Jack inspires Tom. And he said that Trevino and J.C. Sneed were together because they're best friends and nobody else can play with Lee. And then Irvin and Littler were together because they're both quiet. And Miller and Geiberger were together because they're both tall. There you go.
So he put a lot into it.
Oh, yeah.
Billy, Weiskopf talked about a conversation he had with Nicholas. What did the Golden Bear tell him?
he told him, first of all, he says, Nicholas is the most positive guy that's ever lived. He goes, I hit a shot about 25 feet from the cup and I said, you could make that, can't you, Bear? You ever miss one that short? Jack stared at me in all seriousness and said, I've never missed one in my mind. The ball doesn't always go in the cup, but I didn't miss it. Nicholas made the 25-footer, incidentally.
Isn't that great?
Man,
I mean,
that guy, man.
that story doesn't work if he misses it. But
I
with
know
him
that.
saying,
I know
you know,
that.
in my head I make it every time, but not this time. But not always. The ball doesn't always go in, but this time it did. I mean, that's just awesome. So love that.
Well, you know
Let's
what's
go ahead.
so interesting about the Ryder Cup is that so they're defeating Britain and Ireland and they dominated them. So what did they do? They changed it to continental Europe over the next few years, and that then made it a much more competitive, you know, tournament every 2 years.
I was going to ask and wondered if that was the case because, you know, like Billy, the U.S. for a long time there just completely dominated this, right?
Yeah, they won every year from 1959 till 1983. The Ryder Cup is held every 2 years. So, but 59 to 83, they won every one of them. And then from 1985, Europe has won 13 of 19 cups.
So that means if it was Britain and Ireland, you know, I know Spain's a big one that they got Seve Ballesteros and Maria Olazabal, and some great Spaniards have helped them even out this series. So yeah, enjoy the Ryder Cup. It's one of the, you know, it's a team. It's when golf becomes a team sport, and I guess I like team sports more. So. No roses for Garden City Joe. This is Joe Namath and the Jets, and they get absolutely smoked by OJ and the Bills, 42-14 in the season opener in 1975. Since 1969, when the Jets were 10-4, they are just 21-21 in the 42 games started by Broadway Joe since then. And in 50 years since then, they've had winning seasons 15 times. And in this game, Namath threw for 173 yards, and the Juice ran for 173 yards. So advantage Bills. The Jets won their last 6 games in 74 to finish the season at 7-7, and there was talk of a Super Bowl run here in 75, but this opening loss was a prelude of things to come. They would actually win their next 2 games, but they would win just one other game after that and finish 3-11. And Mark, this is really, I mean, we've been seeing it for a while, but this is really the beginning of the end for Broadway Joe.
Yeah, he would have, he started with the Jets in 65, and the following year, 76, would be his last season with the Jets before he goes and plays that one year with the Rams in 77. But, the knee injuries, it just took its toll. He had no mobility. He still had the arm. But yeah, I mean, it's sad. And maybe if he'd been able to stay healthy and didn't have all those knee problems, he could have played a lot longer and, had a lot more records.
Billy, you got anything to add on Broadway Joe?
I just thought that, because we're doing a podcast called Past Our Prime, and one of the players on the Jets says that Namath is 32 years old now. He's almost a senior citizen. Man, what I wouldn't give to go back 30 years and be able to be a senior citizen at 32, man.
Right. Yeah, 32. If you
It's
take
not a spring chicken anymore. Just remember that.
Unbelievable.
I guess in football sense, that's true, but in life, come on.
The Thrilla in Manila. That's about this. Let's see. The issue we're talking about came out on September 29th, 1975. The fight was just 2 days later, October 1st. And what's so weird about that? That was on a Wednesday.
That's odd.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, I remember the first fight, I believe, was on a Monday night. It was during the week.
It was. I looked it up. It was on a Monday, and I'll now being where we are in our world where Monday Night Football is such a part of our culture, I can kind of like, okay, that makes I guess that makes some sense.
But
Wednesday, and get this, local time, it's starting at 10:30 in the morning in the Philippines, and that's because it will start at like 6:30 in New York. Top ticket $300, a bleacher seats $2. And in attendance will be the president of the Philippines, Ferdinand Marcos. They did a long interview with him in the magazine. They also did a piece on Angelo Dundee's assistant, Dean Bundon Brown, one of Ali's cornermen. And he basically writes about how his guy Ali is going to destroy Smokin' Joe. But Billy, this fight, not to give away too much about it, but this is the third time these guys have fought in 4 years. And some say neither of them physically ever recovered from this brawl.
No, they said it was the most brutal of the 3 fights, believe it or not, because they had 2 big ones before that. And there was one magazine, Ring Magazine, said that 1975, it was the fight of the year. And they said the 12th round would be named Round of the Year. And the fight, I'm not going to give it away, but it went into the late rounds, and they were just beating each other up. I mean, just tearing each other up. So and who knows? I know Mark had mentioned this a little bit prior to going on air about that might be some of the reasons these 2 fighters had issues later in life.
Yeah.
Physical
Yeah,
issues, yeah, for sure.
I'm amazed that Thomas Hitman Hearns is still alive because, man, when he was fighting and all the blows he took, his speech was slurred when he was a young man in his 20s and 30s. It's a tough sport.
Yep.
But the first fight had all the hype. And that was a Monday night because I remember going to school. I was in 6th grade during Monday, and everybody was thinking about the fight that night. And it was I want to say in April or March, so there was no Monday Night Football to compete against. But so no one thought that this fight could top the first fight. But the third fight is really the fight everyone remembers, even though the hype for the first fight was so incredible.
Yeah. I just think that the difference between marketing and hyping things from 1971 to 1975 had grown exponentially to where, plus these guys were, if not the 2 most famous athletes in the world at the time, they were certainly up there. And Ali was such a for lack of a better word, such a shit talker, that he was so great at selling the fight. And of course, Frazier hated that. This is the third fight, as we mentioned. They've each won once. Ali wants to win, but Frazier, he doesn't want to win. He says, I want to hurt him. If I knock him down, I'll stand back, give him a chance to breathe, to get up. It's his heart I want. That's because of all the talking Ali does. Muhammad is part show, he's a showman for sure. And he's calling Frazier a gorilla. Joe Frazier's a gorilla. He's going to fall in Manila. And Frazier just, he couldn't get past the fact that Ali was doing this partially to sell tickets, also partially to get under his skin, and it worked. I mean, Frazier hated him. College football, nothing sneaky about him, and this is in Mark's wheelhouse. We won't talk about UCLA football in 2025, but in 1975, Mark, tell our listeners about UCLA's quarterback.
John Shara, and he was as effective with his legs as with his arms. He was a tough kid. And he played in the NFL, but not as a quarterback, as a defensive back, as a safety. But, it was Shara's running that helped them upset Ohio State in that Rose Bowl. It was a fun team. It was Dick Vermeil's, I think, second and last season at UCLA, which was a shocker that he went to the Eagles. And then they promoted an assistant with very little experience, Terry Donahue, but that one worked out.
Yeah. And they were a very good team. They'd finish 8-2-1, and they would lose to Ohio State and Washington, but didn't they come back and beat Ohio State in the Rose Bowl?
Yep, they lost 41-20 at the Coliseum to Ohio State early in the season. I was at that game, and it wasn't close. But then, so everyone thought the Rose Bowl would be the same thing, but UCLA dominated that Rose Bowl game, and even though the score was only 23-10, UCLA was in complete control of that game.
Strange. 6 players on this team played in the NFL, including Shara, who, what did he play in the NFL, Billy?
Strong safety for the Eagles. He was drafted by the Bears in the 4th round, but played strong safety with the Eagles for 5 years.
Wow. Good for him.
Yeah.
Wendell Tyler, Doc Walker, and Randy Cross all on this Bruins team. So elsewhere in college football, what jumped out at you guys? Billy?
Michigan State, they ended Miami of Ohio's 24-game unbeaten streak with a 14-13 victory. The winning touchdown came on a 56-yard pass from quarterback Charlie Baggett to Kirk Gibson in the 3rd quarter.
Kirk Gibson?
Yep.
Whatever happened to him?
Wow.
Yeah, he stinks.
He's
did he have a football career?
People may, I don't know if they know that the walk-off home run, the original walk-off was Eckersley said that he walked me off, and that he was talking about Gibson's 88 World Series.
I drive deep right field.
Shut up.
It was great. I worked on a show called Hardcore Baseball in 1999 and 2000 that aired on Fox Sports Net. And we had one show with Dennis Eckersley on it, and we had another show with Kirk Gibson on it. And then we married the shows together later on and did one, the going back and forth, the two guys talking about the at-bat, which was fascinating.
Love that. Yeah.
But I have one football story to talk about. Since you were mentioning Michigan State, I'm going to talk about the Michigan-Stanford game. So Michigan was number 2 in the country, yet they end up in a 19-19 tie with Stanford. What's so interesting about that game? So the Michigan quarterback was Rick Leach, who ended up playing baseball for the Tigers. Never really was a football player. And then one of the touchdowns from Stanford went to a 25-yarder to Tony Hill, who had many great years with the Cowboys.
Sure did. Yeah. And then you have Ricky Bell rushing for 215 yards in a 24-7 win over Oregon State. Despite this, his head coach, John McKay, said afterwards that if Bell continues to get the same blocking he did against Oregon State, he'll be dead by the 5th game. What about in the pros? We're not talking just week 1 in the Jets-Bills. Nope, there was a strike in the NFL in 1975. Did you guys know that? I had no idea. We talked to Bill Curry about a player's agreement or contract a year earlier. And here we are now a year from that. They still don't have a contract. The Patriots actually boycotted the last exhibition game against the Jets. And they're like thinking, all right, we're going to get the owner's attention. Well, Only 4 other teams voted to strike with them. 9 others voted against it. I'm not going to get too much into the weeds. It wasn't a full-fledged strike, and it wouldn't be until March 1977, almost 2 more years, that the two sides agreed on a contract. I mean, that's just unheard of now. The union is so strong in every major sport, but that wasn't the case 50 years ago.
Callie was rough. I liked her gift. I said I loved it.
Hi, Callie.
Hi.
Hi, Kelly.
Hi.
Yeah.
Let's talk baseball as we're getting closer to the end of the regular season. Boston has dominated the AL East all season long, with Fred Lynn leading the way, but their fans are always worried that something bad is right around the corner. And Billy, something is bad. What happened to Jim Rice?
Jim Rice out, got hit on he broke his hand. And so he's out for the whole playoffs and the World Series. But Boston, had to replace him with a stiff. Carl Yastrzemski came in, replacing with that. And I just looked up stats. I mean, honestly, against the A's and Reds in the playoffs, he went 14 for 40.
Yeah, that's a cool 350.
Yeah, so Carl Yastrzemski came in, just an amazing thing, but unfortunate for Jim Rice, who had finished the season with a 309, 22 home runs, and 102 RBI. But he would have lost the Rookie of the Year to Fred Lynn, who had a better season.
No question.
Yeah,
All-time season. Yastrzemski was playing first for most of that season, so he goes out to left, which he had played for forever. And then they have another guy come off the bench by the name of Cecil Cooper.
I hate him.
Right? Pretty stacked team. Yeah, he did pretty well against the Angels, didn't he?
In the playoffs when they pitched whatever, was it Luis Sanchez instead of going to Andy Hassler? Single up the middle, the Angels. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Red Sox Magic. You seem like you're over it. It's only 43 years ago, but
it's still stupid play by Mock.
Red Sox Magic number is 9, so any combination of Sox wins and Oriole losses totaling 9, and the Sox win the division. They split a pair at Fenway, so the number is 7. As they head to Detroit, they win 2 of 3 against those horrible Tigers, and the number's down to 5. Mark, what else about those dreadful losing streak Tigers of 75?
Well, they're probably playing just as bad as the current Tigers are, who can't hold a gigantic lead in the division. But that was a horrible year. This is the year of the 19-game losing streak and stuff. So on Appreciation Day, the Tigers paid tribute to 5 of their players who had already had 10 years of service in the league. Gates Brown, Mickey Stanley, Willie Horton, Mickey Lolich, and Bill Freehan, which is the problem. They had so many veterans that were sorted, maybe not so much Horton, but a lot of their veterans were no longer the players they were in the past, which is why they needed, over the next few years, to bring in an influx of new talent to change the course of that team. Mark Fidrich the following year, then Lou Whitaker and Alan Trammell in 77, Lance Parrish,
Dave Rozema,
Jack Morris, Dan Petrie. So there would be brighter times ahead for the Tigers.
Yeah. What else is going on, Billy? One of the best all-time games by a hitter.
Yeah, Rennie Stennett of the Pirates went 7 for 7. He tied the record set by Wilbert Robinson in 1892.
Oh my goodness. That was
7 for 7, man.
But you know what? Going 7 for 7 doesn't mean you're a great player, because you know who else won 7 for 7?
Jason Thompson.
Nope, but it was a Tiger.
Steve Kemp.
Nope. A name on everyone's list: Cesar Gutierrez.
That's him.
I know you've heard of Cesar Gutierrez. He was a shortstop that couldn't really hit except for this one game. June 21st, 1970. It's the second game of a doubleheader against the Indians. He has 7 hits and 7 at-bats.
Yeah.
And he was the second player after Wilbur Robertson to do it.
Yeah.
So his batting average went from 218 to 249.
Wow.
I'm sure it never won any higher. His career batting average was 235.
They didn't even want to mention the Tigers' name in this article.
No. He had 128 hits.
That guy sucks.
He had 128 hits in his career. So,
Wow. So,
7 of them came on one day.
1/18th of his career hits in one game.
Yeah.
Rennie, the thing about Rennie, and maybe it was true with Cesar, but he did it in a 9-inning game. So that in itself is crazy because, 7 at-bats in a 9-inning game. But it's probably because it was kind of a blowout. The Pirates hung on to beat the Cubs 22-0. Billy, tell me
Close
about the
enough.
Braves. Oh, the poor Braves. They were almost as bad as the Tigers.
Yeah, but they had an article come out in the Atlanta Journal. It reported that 11 Braves have asked to be traded. But then it said the Braves management wants to trade 18 of them.
One of them was Dusty Baker, and in November he gets his wish. He's sent to L.A. for Jimmy Wynn, Lee Lacy, Jerry Royster, and Tom Paciorek. So, and Baker was a very good player in Atlanta, but I feel like took his game to another level once he became a Dodger.
How could they trade Wimpy?
Right, right.
I don't know what that name was, but that's what Hawk Harrelson used to say.
He
Wimpy.
did, called him Wimpy. Watch on the Ohio. This is an article about Cincinnati, basically. I mean, the Reds are having this phenomenal season in Cincinnati, and Frank DeFord is going there to talk about Cincinnati as a whole. He does a profile in the city and starts by talking to Pete Rose, who says guys like him played more baseball as kids than they do now. Why? Because of the way girls dress in 1975. When you were growing up, did the girls dress the way they do now? No, right? Well, that takes the kids more away from baseball now. So you never know what the hell Pete Rose is thinking, that's for sure. To think that they play baseball last because of how girls dress. But Billy, tell me about Cincinnati from 1975 versus Cincinnati, the city, not the team, in 2025.
Okay, the Christian Science Monitor in 1975 listed Cincinnati as one of the 10 most livable cities in the US. Now let's go up 50 years. 2025, livability has Cincinnati at 96.
Still top 100.
It is, but they've dropped quite a bit, and it's not because they're chilly.
I just want to say this: the Red Sox, who they're going to play in the World Series, hadn't won a World Series since 1918. The Reds won the next year, 1919, when they beat the Chicago Black Sox. Then they won again in 1940. So that's 35 years before this year, 1975. So I always thought this series was, oh, you poor Red Sox, you never win. But that was the Reds as well. They
Yeah.
won in 1919, 1940. They've been around since like the 1870s or something like that. So
You know,
and
you know who they beat in 1940?
The
probably
Tigers,
your Tigers.
You got it.
4-3 World Series.
Yeah, yeah.
led by
Got me to
Vandermeer
thinking
and
about
Ernie
the
Lombardi.
Cubs. When the Cubs ended their 108 years of futility, they did it at the expense of the Indians.
Yeah, who'd 60 years, whatever.
The Indians haven't won since 1948. That was 68 years ago. So it's
Right.
not, everyone was like, oh, the poor Cubs never win. Well, what about the poor Indians? So, that's what happens when the Yankees have won 27 World Series. They were hogging all those World Series
Yes, they
for all
were.
these other teams. All right, as our good friend Dave Johnson says,
Come down the stretch they come.
exactly. For the record, I got one. Recuperating, Bobby Orr, star defenseman for the Boston Bruins, following successful surgery on his left knee for removal of bone chips. It's his fourth operation in 9 seasons and will sideline him for the first month of the season. He would return November 8th, but the knee and the pain in the knee becomes too much. He played in 10 games before he had to stop, and he would never play another game for the Bruins. So basically the end of one of the greatest players of all time. Some would say the greatest. I know that's crazy talk when you hear that for Gretzky, but some people think Bobby Orr is the greatest player of all time. Mark, what do you got?
I got the retirement of a legend. Bob Gibson, 39 years old, with the Cardinals after 17 seasons, won 251 games. He appeared in 3 World Series, and he is calling it a career. Most intimidating pitcher in baseball history.
It's so funny that you say that because I'm reading a book, and today it's a book on Ricky Henderson, and they were talking about how he just kept playing, and he brought up Bob Gibson, and Bob Gibson gave up a grand slam to Pete LaCock in this 1975 season, and he has a quote that basically says, once you're giving up grand slams to Pete LaCock, it's time to call it quits. Faces in the crowd, Mark.
I have got, not often you see a 9-year-old in Faces in the Crowd. So I like it when they start this young. David Lee of Carmichael, California. He won 3 national championships this year, wrestling in the 65-pound class. Took both Greco-Roman and freestyle. His third as a lightweight champion. So, did the 9-year-old continue his wrestling career? He sure did. He's listed, as the first wrestler in California history to win a state championship 3 times. 1982 at 138 pounds, 1983 at 154, and 1984 at 165. He was a high school All-American and the most heavily recruited wrestler in the nation in 1984. He went on to wrestle at both Stanford and the University of Wisconsin. He was a 3-time All-American and an NCAA champ. He was honored as Athlete of the Year by the University of Wisconsin in 1988, and he had international success as well. So he's living still in Palo Alto, and so he carried that on from a 9-year-old. His dream of wrestling marched on.
19th hole, Billy.
Okay. This is from Kenneth A. Dean from Chicago. He says, in For the Record on September 8th, you stated that New England jostled Green Bay 2017 in overtime. You really meant sudden death overtime. There is a big difference. Overtime is what your staff probably had to work the week of the Labor Day holiday in order to publish your September 8th issue on schedule. Sudden death is what happens when you rate Alabama second in the country and it promptly loses its first game to unranked Missouri.
Who is this angry SOB?
Kenneth A. Dean from Chicago.
I don't think Kenneth isn't with us anymore. You can't be that angry and
no
last too long.
Man,
can be angry.
You really love your team that much when you just, they didn't jostle them. You don't understand. I'm gonna take it to the top.
I got one from Philip Shaka, West Hempstead, New York. I couldn't agree more with your September 15th cover story. Don King is boxing's new Barnum. The only difference I see is that instead of one sucker being born every minute, it would appear that there are 2 or 3. It's enough to keep me from spending my good money to see Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier fight. Well, Phil, I'm going to say one thing. You missed a hell of a fight.
Bad call, Phil.
Yeah. I hope someone didn't get any of their teeth knocked out. If they did, Ken MacAfee is the guy to call. He's in Falmouth, Massachusetts. Want to thank once again the 3-time All-American from Notre Dame for joining us. Shout out to his former teammate Frank Alaco for helping to make this happen. I'm going to say it, but they don't make him like that anymore. Next week, Reggie Jackson on the cover. A's are going for 4 straight, boys. Woo!
Yeah, you bring it home.
We'll talk to a former teammate and sparring partner of his, Billy North, part of that swingin' A's dynasty. Until then, for Bill and Mark, I'm Scott, and we are Past Our Prime.
Past Our Prime.
Goodbye.
Yes. All right. Got a little echo there from Mark.